Hey guys, in this lecture we're going to see the example of get request, how to test get request. Okay, we're going to use the same our API, same base URL. This is the same endpoint, and also you already know from our last lecture that this is return as a single user data, like the data ID, email, and first name, last name, and so on. So last lecture we didn't do the validation. We just printed the response, right? Some part of the response body. So in this lecture, we're going to see how we can do the validation. Okay, this is the one of the objective for testing, so that you can do a validation, which is you can compare your expected versus your actual response. Okay, let's go to our so again we're going to use single user. This is the API user, so it's all are coming. I'm using again giving the rest reference from here. So I put all those things. The test we're going to use different request type in this Excel sheet, but all the data is coming from there. So here is a get request. You can see this is the data, right? And the response status code also 200 we're expecting. So this is also one of our validation. Go up here. I just created one spec file. I gave a name. It's a get user sci.js. Okay, and here we're going to put our common describe and init block. Let's put the describe and init block. I'm just putting a describe and init block. Describe, you can say learn REST API testing. This is, I'm just keeping is describe as the same as it is, very simple. And the init block, I will change the title of the init block. I will say, let's give it is up here. I will say validate user details successfully. So first thing first, we're going to make our request call, API call, we have to use cy request, right? We have to call the request method and pass our endpoint. What's our endpoint? Slash append with our base URL, right? So after the base URL, what should the part is API slash users, right? User slash 2, all right? It's a single user API. And then after that, what do we have to use? After that, we have to use our .then, right? But here, one thing, when you send your request, with this, our endpoint, along with the endpoint, we can send more parameter. You can see if I put up here, you can pass your URL, and then your some part of you can add some chainable, some more some argument we can pass that with this. Okay, so what's argument? You can specifically mention what's your request type. So pass multiple argument with your request. So we can put this one here, and we can put this one in a curly braces. Okay, let me make it so we can say first, we can say example method. Okay, we can say method equals to, you can put this way, you can put a method equals to colon, then get method. This is the get method. Then the next one is your URL. So it was the URL, right? So you can put URL. This is the value of your URL, right? This is the value for your URL, right? And if you can add even more, you'll see in our upcoming future lecture, you will see you can add more argument along with this request if you need. Sometimes you need to pass your token, your authentication element, so you can pass along with this request. And after that, we have to call the then method. So if you call the then method, it will receive our response, right? Then again, it's the same. We'll say response, right? The variable we're declaring, right? A response, and then this is the method of your response, and this is the body of the response. And now we can use Now it's time. So this variable will receive the response. Now we have to do some validation. To do the validation, we're following the Mocha framework, right? We can use one of the Mocha frameworks validation. It's called our assertion. It's called expect, right? We can use expect. You can use expect. What do you want to expect? So we want to expect, say, use this our response, because it has this is the holding our all the response from there. So you can say example from their body, from the body of the response, we can do some assertion. We can say what we should have to example to have, because in a response body we have a number of properties, right? So we have a properties data, we have a properties support, right? We have a, so those kind of things. So we can say to have dot property, you can use property, and then you can say what's the property we can expect. Let's say example data. This is one validation. If you go here, so this is the response we're expecting. You can see this is the response body. This is the data, is the first objective of your response, and inside this response there is those are the property, right? Your ID, email, right? Those kind of things. So we can do those validation. We can say that's in the response body we have a properties. First property is the data. You can do validation any string, a specific one single string. Okay, so that's one response you could have. You can do more validation. It's totally up to you. We can do a validation like the status code. What should be the status code? The status code should be you can say this part expect response dot status code. You can just copy this part. Okay, let's put up here expect. So we're using expect and then response dot status, right? Status, and it should be equal, right? So it means to dot, there's a method is called equal method. You can see use equal. It should be equals to, what's the equal to? It should be equals to 200, right? It should be equals to 200. You can add now more even inside the data. So in a response body you have a data object. Inside the data property we have some attribute like value and key and value. We're gonna add more specific. Okay, so we can say response body, and from the response body, from the data object, it up here it should include key. So those are the key. You can see those are the key, right? Like here inside the data object. So ID is the key, one key. Those are key or parameter, right? A key or ID, email, first names, those are the key, and this is the value, right? So we can specifically say it should include in your data object, include keys are ID, email, first name. You can add more, last name, and so on, right? You can even say that the response, header. I know it's the header. It has the header, but in our last lecture we have seen this response get request. In this API request we have a response along with the body. There is a header, right? So if you can do a validation for the header too. Let me see how we can see the comparison between headers, one of the key and value. Okay, if you remember that they have a body is one part of the response, and header is another entity, right, of the response. So it is out of the bodies. Body is one entity of the response, the header is another, and inside the header they have a lot of key and values. One of the keys content type, and this is the value application /JSON, right? So how can we do this validation? Like it's out of the the body, it's a totally separate another entity of your response. So that time we can say similarly, same way we can say expect response. Instead of body we'll say headers, right? Headers. And from headers, what do you want? We want from the headers, we want to validate content type. This content type equals to application slash the value should be like this. Okay, so here we'll say expect response header. You can put this way too. So after your header, your actual entity, and inside this you can pass a specific key. You can put out of headers. So what's your specific key? You can say content type, then you can say to include to dot, you can use include is the chaining assertion. To include, it should be include what's the value of this content type should be the, well, we have seen in our last one, right, up here, in this one, right, we printed this one. So I'm just using this, showing this one, the Postman one. It's easy to see. Okay, for yourself, those kind of data is supposed to provide by your API developer, okay, with a contract document. Or you have to run and get the log, use the log so that you can see the output as a print. So, and then you can use this one. Okay, it's totally up to you how you get the data. So here is an application. So I'm using it. Since I use the include, so partial the value from the value should be okay. Okay, so that's the way you can do. Or from the body part, so we notice the body, you have an ID, and then email, first name, last name, and those ID has a value, email has a value, right? How can we do this? So we can use same way. Say this is another way we can use. Let's copy this part. I expect response body from the data, right? Data, and from the data, what's the example I want to validate the value of the ID. Okay, from the data dot ID, right? Again, if you don't know the right path, use the JSON Pathfinder, that application. Okay, and ID, and again 2 dot equal, right? 2 dot equal, and what's the value? The ID value should be 2, right? This way you can put even. Okay, so let me save it and run it. Go to our test runner, and here get a user. This is the one. Here we're seeing that there is an error. Response headers content type is saying that object test must be an array, a map, an object, and set a string, but undefined given. Okay, it's given undefined. To include, okay, let me see. They're saying from the headers, this key is undefined. So this, I think I put in uppercase, content should be lowercase. Content, I think content type T should be lowercase too. To include, because it's match apple to apple, an application JSON. Let me see now. Here you go, you can see now. Okay, so this is the header part, right? This is the header part. You'll not see any UI output up here, because in the API testing doesn't have any graphical user interface, right? So here is you can see there's a property of data, and this is the status validation, right? And this is the ID validation, right? So this is the way you can do it, validate your different parts of body or from the response. Okay, so apart from this, there is another way you can write your code. Okay, I'm going to just I will just, to save our time, I will copy and paste the code. Let me just get the code, so I can just give you explain. So this is one it block. This is one int block. So outside of this int block, where is the descriptor? And you can reformat. You can format your document so it looks much more organized. Okay, this is your int block. So outside of int blocks, let's add another int block. So now notice this one. How you write. It's a different people, they write different way. It's totally both of them right. So this is the alternate way. So this is request. It's exactly the same way we wrote our request, right? And here we put this request in a alias. So this is the alias. It works as a variable, right? It works as a variable. Exactly the same here. We put a dot then method. Instead of that, we use alias. So this whole request, it's stored now in this variable alias. And this alias, and after that, we're using CUI get method. So this get method, when you use CUI get method and pass this alias, So alias is nothing, it has this request information. And when you use get is always used to receive. Okay, receive the target about what? About this request, and this request is belongs to this alias. So it means you are using over here CUI get to receive the target, receive the response using this same alias. And from there you can use its method. You can call it method its from there. So this is now this part is now using as a response, and response from its status should equal to 100. Then from again you use, since that's why they use as an alias, so that they can repeatedly they can use in with the get method. Again, this part is a response part, and its body from the body. So this is a response, so it's from the response body data id should equals to 2. Response, its header, it should contain one of the key, this its content, this is the key, and should equals include this is the value of the content, right? Same way you can use those kind of things, right? The same way. So the both are, this is like alternate way, both are right, alternate way to write. Some people, they may write this way. So this is just to give FY, if you see this way to someone to write their code, don't be surprised. And this is the meaning, how it's translated. Okay, so that's all for the get example. Thank you.